Hello and welcome to CPT 323, and this is the micro lesson for this week. And what I did for this week is I'm actually pulled up the instructions for the final, so you get a general feel for some things that you're going to need to grab a hold of in order to come to grips with the final. Now the first one it says is develop a Microsoft Access database with the tables necessary to hold any 5 states of the United States of America, their capitals, and a graphic picture of the appropriate state flag or state tree or flower. All this information is available on the internet. Any graphics may be needed to size to fit your project. Now, so the first thing it's going to do is it's going to store all this information in the tables. The tables are where it's going to keep the information, but what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to take this information and you're going to have to put it somewhere to work with it. My suggestion straight away when looking at this is an array of user-defined type. And what's going to probably happen in that array of user-defined type, in the array of user-defined type, it's going to have the state, the capital, right? And a picture. Okay? So those are things. Now, since we're only storing 5, you only need to declare an array 5 long. If I was storing all 50, then of course I would need to do an array that was, 50 long. Then it says, using VBA, construct a multiple choice quiz which randomly selects a state and asks the user to select correct capital and randomly selected state. So, after I read that, some keywords there that I'm looking at here are random. I have 5 states, so I'm going to have to generate a random number. Between 1 and 5, which is actually 0 and 4. Okay, so that's that part. So there's a random, generate a random number. Now it also states, let me just, It also states, using VBA multiple choice and randomly select a state and ask the user to select the correct capital of the randomly selected state. So I'm going to have to do some string concatenation. Right? I'm just putting that out there. And I'm probably going to have to use a message box or an input box. Conversely, I could also use a label and a label and text box, if you want to do it that way. Now, you'll notice I'm not actually writing any of this out because, this is a final. So you gotta kind of interpret what I'm doing here, but this gives you some good starting points, right? So after I get all that, it says if the user answers incorrectly, the screen should display a message with the word incorrect, with the state name, the correct capital, and the correct graphic. Okay. If the user answers incorrectly, display an appropriate image. So the question I would then look at is, okay, how am I going to choose between 2 different options? The way I'm going to choose between 2 different options is an if-then, right? And I'm going to say if they chose the correct state, whatever my correct state is, then I'll use that. If not, then I'll use the other options. So I might use a string compare. And for those of you looking really interesting, you might have some sort of randomization to the answers so the user knows I'm going to have a question and then there's going to be my random answers. But remember, in the answers, you're going to also have the correct answer. So when you randomly pick a state, you're going to have to make sure to correctly pick a capital and have items fill in the rest that are incorrect. So you might have a word bank of incorrect answers. Right? Because if it's always the same incorrect answer, then you're always going to know. So that might be one way. And remember, one of the answers will have to be correct, whereas the rest are not, and you will have to be able to tell. And this is where we get into our string compare. If this equals this, do this, right? So there's your other options right there. Now, I didn't write out any code. I just gave you a whole lot of, I don't want to say hints, I would just give you some starting points to kind of coming up with the answers of what you're looking for. And it says you may use previously developed programming challenges or code. You may also request assistance from fellow class developers by using the appropriate discussion board and Blackboard. Do not exchange completed projects. Submit the modified database. So they're all going to be slightly different. They're going to maybe work the same, but they're all going to be slightly different. I hope that gives you kind of an idea. So you're going to have an array. You're going to have a user-defined type. And a user-defined type is probably going to be state, capital, and picture. Or you're bringing it in from the table, or you're searching the table directly. So it can have state and capital, and you search through the, or you could just have one array, and you search through the table to find the capital and picture. You know, the easier way to go about doing it is I'm going to throw it into an array, and then I'm going to randomize the array. But that's totally up to you. Then you're going to generate a random number. That's going to go from 0 to 4 to pull the state that you're looking for. And then you use string concatenation, a message box or an input box, or a label and text box to get the information from the user. So they might have a display that says, okay, here's what I think is the answer. Here's my choices of answers. So if you want that, but it also says you develop a. It says, let's see, holding 5 states or capitals and graphic appropriate. Using a multiple choice quiz. So it can't be, you can enter in the value, so A, B, C, or D, but it is a multiple choice quiz. So not really a fill in the blank unless the fill in the blank is the value. So the input box, the message box, might not be the best way, but you could do it that way. It's not required, but you could do it that way. Or you can have a number of radio buttons that you can choose, A, B, C, or D, and then that can get your input that way. But a lot of it's going to be, I'm going to generate the random number, I'm going to get the information, then I'm going to pull the information into a question based off of the random number that it's chosen, then I'm going to pull the possible answers based off of randomization. Remember, one has to be correct. And then and that's one part. I've generated the whole question. Then after I've generated the question, based off the user input, I then say, okay, yes or no. I can give it through a message box if you want. And then your feedback is going to be based off of incorrect with the state name, the correct capital, and the correct matching graphic. So state, capital, graphic. That's the incorrect option. And if the user answers correctly, display an appropriate message. Hey, good job. And then you don't do anything else with it. And it always chooses randomly. It's not the same questions. It's not the same answers. So I've gone through a lot of different possibilities. I hope that kind of helps you as a springboard, figuring out what's going on. Like I said, start early, start often. Thank you very much for your time. And good luck this week. You have the ability to get this done.